So this past week, I almost got scammed for thousands of dollars from a roofer. And I want to show you guys a couple of things that threw up red flags for me. And I also want to share with you guys how to properly have the roof installed, or at least some of the things to look for to make sure you know, or at least they are installing the roof properly. But first things first, that threw up the biggest red flag was that they were pushing for doing the roof without a permit. Now, I get it. If you want to do a repair, you want to do a quick job, you don't want to go through the permitting, you can do that, but just understand it's going to bite you in the buns later, especially when it comes to inspections or code enforcement, or even when it simply comes to selling your property. If you don't have a permit on your roof, it's not going to be that quote unquote time stamped and date that you will have when you go to sell the property. And this is huge, because if you're selling a property and the roof is over a certain age, you cannot get insurance. If you cannot get insurance, then the person buying the house is unable to get a mortgage. With a mortgage, you have to have insurance, so you're likely going to dwindle the amount of possible buyers for your home. So numero uno is making sure they're pulling a permit. A licensed roofer shouldn't have any issue with this whatsoever. If they aren't licensed, they cannot pull a permit. So that is flag number one. The second is no license on their truck. If they don't have their license number on their truck, or they pull up in a U-Haul, in this case, one of the roofers working on our roof, they did not have a truck. They just pulled up in a U-Haul and were like, oh yeah, my truck was in shop. So I was like, okay, maybe. Then I showed up the next few days, still in the U-Haul, and was like, okay, something's not adding up. So that is another. There's no license on the truck. Now, this isn't always the case, but this is just one of those things you need to be aware of. Also, if they have any flyers or business cards without the license number, that's a huge no-no. Me, I am a licensed real estate agent. I have to have my license number on my business card. So again, if you're seeing things like that, that's also a huge no-no. Next is payment up front. Do not, I repeat, do not pay any money up front unless you absolutely have to. Now, usually in cases where they're buying material and having to bring it on there, it's understandable to have to pay some up front. But what you can do is you can offer to buy the material and have it shipped to your house. That way they have no money out of cost and they can come and install it, which me personally, I think is fair. And if they're a reasonable roofer, they would be like, yeah, that's fine. If you order the material and have it over there, we can go ahead and install it, and then you pay us when we're done. Obviously, when you sign the NOC and the contract with them, they can file and put a lien on your house if you try to stiff them. Don't do that. Pay them, especially if they do the job. That's just, it's simple. You pay someone when they do the job right. And that's also another thing, is having a knock sign. It's called a notice of commencement. They call them knocks, like NOC, just kind of for short. But that is one of those things you have to sign that allows them to pull the permit and whatnot. You do need to have those notarized. You can get that done at a bank, or the roofing company that you hire will likely be able to do this. Next, a huge red flag is when they talk too much. Now, I know this seems simple, but if someone talks too much, it's not always the case. But if they brag and they say, hey, look, I'm so good, this is what I can do, I did the roof over here, I did the roof over here, I did the roof on like some famous building, and it's like, dude, why are you talking so much? Red flags should be going up. You're probably seeing some of this stuff in the garage. I'm going to show you guys some of the material and some of the things to look for on the roof so you guys know what's up. Leads me into the next one, is making sure the job is properly done. So first things first is this starter strip. This is not a standard shingle. You see how the tar is right in the middle of it? It's almost just like a rectangle shingle. This actually splits in half. This goes at the very bottom of the roof. So right at the edge where the drip edge and the roof meets, this is where it would go. So let me show you what that looks like. it'll go right here. So it'll go right at the bottom edge of this, right under that. And this is also another thing. This is your drip edge right here. Some people say you put the underlayment under the drip edge. Some people say over. I say, why not both? So then what you can do is you can have them, just ask them, it might cost a little bit more, but have them run both. Some states ask for different things, others ask for different. Now, you can use this. This is also called Tiger Paw, or you can just simply use some ice and water shield. It's a much thicker underlayment, but this kind of just goes under it, under the shingle itself. But this allows you to pull off the roof easier, and it also provides that extra sealant. Preferably, if you're going to use this stuff, use like two sheets of it, or 2 layers. It just helps. And when they're installing it, this is the type of nail that you want to see them use. It's not too thin to where it just punches through it, but it also has this plastic tab that it keeps it above it and it holds it together. You want to see them hammer this in, not too tight, because obviously you don't want to puncture a hole through the thing, but something to consider. These are the nails that you're going to use, or that they are going to use for the framing in the wood. Obviously you can see here the head is a bit smaller, but these are the ones that are going to be used for the wood. The ones for the shingle are going to look like this. These do not have a super small head, but they also don't have a super big head. You can see they're about middle size. And the reason for that is because if they were too narrow, they would just shoot straight through the shingle. And if they were too wide, like this, they wouldn't properly adhere to the shingle, and it just wouldn't waterproof it properly, I guess you can say. Whereas the metal nails, they are able to get a tight fit on the shingle. Now, some other things are the drip edge. So on this drip edge, this is one out here. This is a piece of garbage drip edge. You can see how this is like a thin little, this is terrible. You don't want this. Get the thick ones. The thick ones are good, and make sure they protrude over the fascia. Like you see how this one is touching, it's covered in aluminum, so that helps, but you don't want that. And the reason for that is because as the edge drips, and if it's touching the wood, that water will get up under it, and over time it will rot in the wood. Now, the ridge vents at the very top of the roof, there are no ridge vents on this roof, but on the ridge vents on other roofs, make sure they cut a hole in the ceiling before they put the vent down, and make sure they use these type of screws. I'm not talking about this one in length, I'm just talking about ones with a rubber washer. This is important because I've had a roof where they just came in and just nailed them down. Over time, it started leaking, and it may not do anything at first, but eventually over time the wood rots, the leak gets worse, and then you end up having to place your roof sooner rather than later. So make sure they are using the right type of nails for this. Also, one other thing, make sure they are using Valley metal and flashing. This is what Valley metal looks like. You can kind of see it's literally just like a thin piece of metal, but this will go right into the valley. So basically where the roof butts up. And this is really important because if it rains super hard and you have a valley, like that is a valley right there, you want to make sure you have a piece of metal there. The reason for that is because as those shingles butt together, over time, they will puncture into that underlayment that I showed you, because it's just one of those edge parts, and then that's where a lot of the water runs and it causes it to leak. Right here, this is where you want to have the flashing. So the flashing goes up onto the wall, and it also goes under. It's the same concept as this, but a lot of water just pools there. Anyways, those are just some of the things to look for. I'll show you guys some more in the videos, and YouTube also helps really, really well. There's a lot of different roofers out there that will post YouTube content, and you can look on there and match it up and see if the roofer is starting to do it properly. There's a lot of wazoos out there, and they are trying to take your money. The biggest keys to look for is, one, do they talk a lot? If they talk a lot, like, why are they talking a lot? Usually something is wrong. Second is if they're asking for money up front. They should never ask for money up front. Obviously, if they're needing to do material, then you can go on the other side and offer and say, hey, look, I'll buy the material, you just install it, I'll pay you when it's done. That should be a reasonable deal, especially if it's someone that you haven't used. And then obviously look for referrals. So if someone is like, yeah, these guys are good, they did my roof, that should be a bit comforting. But do the best you can not to pay money up front unless you absolutely have to. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.